Morning. We're going to talk some today about intercepts, x-intercept and y-intercept, and a little bit about slope-intercept form. So when you are graphing, you can actually graph a linear equation easily by finding the x-intercept and the y-intercept. So the x-intercept is where your line crosses the x-axis. Anytime you identify an x-intercept, your y value there is always going to be 0. The y-intercept then is the opposite of that, which is where the value for y is on the or crosses the y-axis. And when you're looking at your y-intercept, your x is always going to be 0. And what I mean by that is when you're talking ordered pair there. We'll look at that in just a second. All right, so here's an example. Let's say we're given this equation, 4x minus 3y equals 12, and we're asked to either graph that or we're asked to identify the intercepts. We can do that pretty easily. So let's start with the x-intercept. If we're trying to find the x-intercept, I just told you that y is always going to be 0. And the reason for that is because that line sits on the x-axis. It doesn't go up and down on the y-axis at all. It always just sits at 0. So we can then take 0 and plug that into this equation for the y, because we just said y equals 0. So that would look like this. 4x minus 3 times 0 equals 12. We know that 3 times 0 is 0, so we can kind of eliminate that, which would give us 4x equals 12. From here, we have a one-step equation, and we know to divide both sides of that by 4. And then we just solve, and that gives us x equals 3. So guess what? You've just solved your your x-intercept. Your x-intercept then is 3. Okay. If you were asked for the ordered pair there, meaning giving 2 points, that would be 3, 0. And you would use that for graphing purposes. We'll get to that in a second. So now let's take a look and let's continue with that same example and let's find the y-intercept. Again, if we're trying to find the y-intercept, we know that x is going to be 0. So if we take the same equation here and we plug 0 in for x, that would give us 4 times 0 minus 3y equals 12. We know that 4 times 0 is 0. So that gives us negative 3y equals 12. Again, we're down to a one-step equation. We would divide both sides by negative 3. And that would give us y equals negative 4. Again, that would give us a y-intercept of negative 4. And if you were again talking ordered pair, that would be negative 4, 0 for your y-intercept. So let's look at that on the graph. Okay, here's your graph. We have now identified that the x-intercept, or where the line crosses the x-axis, is going to be 3, 0. And where the point is going to cross the y-axis is going to be 0, negative 4. So we know how to graph those. For your x-intercept, you'll go over 3, and you won't go up any. And for the y-intercept, you will not go left or right at all. You'll just go down, negative 4. And I say down because it's negative. So that's going to look something like this. From there, we can take that and we can create a line. If we were asked, we could now find our slope from this because we know that slope is rise over run. So we could count up 1, 2, 3, 4. We could count over 1, 2, 3. And then we know that's a positive slope. So that would be 4 over 3 would be your slope. That's just an extra little tidbit for you there. All right, so here's another example. Same thing, 8x minus 6y equals 24. If they're asking you to either graph this or find the intercepts, you can do both from here. So let's start with finding the x-intercept. We're going to do that by plugging in 0 for y into this equation. So there we are. We would then go ahead and solve that. That starts as a 2-step. Now we've got it down to a 1-step, and we would solve that. That would give us x equals 3, so your x-intercept is 3. Again, we can do the same thing for the y by plugging in x equals 0. Plug in the 0 for your x here. That would look like this. This is currently a 2-step equation. We can get that down to a 1-step, divide both sides by negative 6, which gives us y equals negative 4. So your y-intercept is negative 4. Again, we can take and graph these. So if we know that your x-axis, the point on that is 3, 0, and your y-axis, the point there is 0, negative 4, that would look like this. Graph your line, and you're all done. All right, hope that helps.